Good evening. So we left off last week. We were both discussing the question: did anything change? It seems like there's a whole bunch of new policies that are coming out regarding bugs. Is this something new that hashgachas are making up, or is it something that was always around? We're going to finish up that topic as well. We will cover this week the topic of: is there a concept of some produce being blacklisted that cannot be eaten altogether? Another question: why are bugs not buttle? Which is something we'll cover as well. Can anybody check, or does it have to be specifically someone who's an expert? We'll also cover what size bugs do we need to look out for? Do we need to use a magnifying glass or a microscope? As well as what exactly is needed to check. Sometimes it seems overwhelming. All types of equipment is needed. Is that really needed? And if we have a little bit more time, we'll discuss as well, is all this washing necessary, or is just checking enough? But to continue on what we were discussing last week, we very briefly we covered that this idea of bugs being found in produce has been around for thousands of years and is discussed throughout the Gemara and Shainim and Poskim and halachic authorities throughout the generations, and it's not something new. But at the same time, we also see a clear discussion in Poskim and halachic authorities that people were ignorant in these matters, and there was a lack of education. And today, Baruch Hashem, we have the ability to spread education and very easily, as well as today there actually is even a bigger issue due to pesticides, which we mentioned last week. Strong pesticides are not being used anymore, so it is definitely very relevant, and there are bugs, and it's not something new. Just a few more points in addition to that is that today we are also consuming a lot more vegetables and produce that need to be checked than it was back then. It's much more common today for people to be eating all different types of greens and kale and whatever else, herbs, fresh herbs, which wasn't always something which your grandparents may have been eating, and therefore we never even heard of checking some things because there was not something that was common to be eaten. So, based on all these facts, we understand the reality is that today, due to the lack of proper pesticides being used due to health reasons, there is bugs found, and it's common, and it's not something new, and we have to address it. We have to figure out how to go about it. So the next question which comes up is there a blacklist? Is there such a thing as some fruits and vegetables? Does that make sense? Because we say that some things is totally one should be staying away from it. If you look, every hashgacha will have their blacklist. Just to mention briefly a few of them, we'll discuss in a different class more. Let's say if it's Brussels sprouts or raspberries or blackberries or asparagus. And the reason why they do not recommend them is because it's too difficult to check. And the question is that really a reason to totally disregard something? If Hashem created it and it's essentially kosher, is there a way that we can eat it? And is it right to say that something is not, we should be avoiding it? So there's actually a discussion amongst poskim if there is a person could, if a Rav or a posek could say that this vegetable is totally off limits and is not kosher anymore because due to the high infestation. And some suggest that yes, some suggest that no, we just have to figure out a way to give the consumers a way to eat it. So if it means that they have to wash it in a very rigorous way and afterwards blend it, then that's the only way you can consume it. We have to always find a way to give consumers a way to eat something, and to totally just blacklist it and say there's no way to eat it is not reasonable. Others, however, say that no, it's if it's very complicated to clean and to get it bug-free, that's enough of a reason to discourage consumers from eating it and not to eat it. And it's something we see as well from the past. There are various farms which it's brought already many times, talking about in the past hundreds of years, farms that bring not to eat, for example, raspberries because they are hardly infested. So it's not something new that hashgachas today decided to blacklist it. It's something that's brought down in Sfarim. As well, it's brought down that the Rebbe Rashab, which he saw this by his father, the Rebbe Maharash, did not eat raspberries in their house. and the reason that's assumed is due to infestation of bugs. So it's definitely something which existed in the past, and there is such an idea to avoid some things due to the high level of infestation. Now, we know in halacha there's a concept of bittul b'shishim, that something is nullified when it's one part, and there's 60 more of the permissible to the ratio of that one thing, then it's permissible. So, for example, if you have a big pot of chicken soup and a drop of milk falls in, if there's 60 times more soup than the milk, then that milk is considered nullified, non-existent, and you can consume the soup without any problems, no issue whatsoever. So if you look at a bug, these bugs are pretty small, and if you're making a salad, even if there's 2 or 3 bugs in that salad, you definitely have 60 times more leaves in salad than those bugs. So why aren't these bugs batal b'shishim? Why are they not nullified? So halacha explains, there's a discussion, and this is addressed in Shulchan Aruch. There's a concept of something called a beria in Hebrew, which in English will be translated as an entity. When there's a whole entity cannot lose its existence. So if it's a drop of milk, when it gets mixed in, at a certain point, will lose its existence. But when you have a whole bug, it's an entity for itself. It's a living being, or even if it died, it's still an entity. No matter how much more there is than that bug, it's still going to exist. It cannot lose its existence. And therefore, that's why bugs are not batal. So even if you have one bug and you have many, many leaves of salad, it could be hundreds or more times leaves than that bug will not become nullified, will not lose its existence, because it's a beria, it's an existence for itself, and it cannot be nullified. However, as soon as that bug is broken apart and is not anymore in existence, then it does become batal. That's why there's more of a leniency when it comes to smoothies or blended things, soups or pestos or whatever it is, which we'll discuss in more detail when the time comes. But that's where the logic comes, because as soon as there's a assumption that the bug is broken up, so it's not anymore in a whole entity, then it does become batal. So that's why the concept of bittul generally will not help, and we do have to go ahead and remove those bugs and check to make sure that there is no bugs. So coming to the next topic, can anybody check? Does someone have to be an expert? Does someone have to be professionally trained? Does basic training work? Is there no training necessary? How does that work? So there are opinions out there that someone needs to be somewhat of an expert. However, it's not the accepted mainstream opinion. The mainstream opinion is that anybody which was giving basic training, basic direction on what to look for and how to check, could go ahead and check, as long as their vision works and they can see. And that's the generally accepted opinion, and that's why it's totally acceptable for any housewife or anybody to check at home, and they don't have to go through rigorous expert training, and they don't have to be an expert or themselves and master finding bugs. They just have to have basic training, understanding what to look for, how to look for it, and that suffices. However, you have to know what to look for. Sometimes it could be complicated. It could be camouflaged. You may be looking for one thing. You may think that you should be looking for a type of fly or a black bug, but really it's not in any way that color. It could be translucent. So that's where the training comes in, and it's like that for all areas of kashrus, that we need some sort of training. Today, the average housewife or the average person in the kosher kitchen doesn't have to deal with as much as people in the past, but in the past it was very common for people to pick up meat, and at home they would have to check the chicken to make sure it was kosher, and if they had any questions or red flags, they would go bring it to a Rav, and then they would salt their own chicken, and if it was the liver, they would broil it, and obviously it wasn't something they just did on their own. They got some basic training from their mother or from somebody else. There was also known and recorded in different sources in halacha of women doing nikur, which is deveining and removing certain nerves and fats in an animal which are forbidden, which is a very complicated task these days, and only very specific people do it. But it was something that even that time housewives did, and with the basic training, they were able to do it. So there is such a concept that there's something in the kitchen may need a little bit of training, and it's not just something that you're going to know on your own, and you get trained. Obviously, one of the purposes of these classes is to give the basic ideas of what someone should be looking for and have a basic idea of how to go about. So going through some sort of basic training is important. Just saying, I know I need to check and I'm going to check, but I don't know what I'm looking for, or how it looks like, or how to check it is not going to be the way to do it. You want to at least get some sort of an idea and get some sort of training. Now, what sometimes people get confused or get overwhelmed with is the size of the bugs. I see little specks, or I see things, is that a bug or not? What is considered something that we need to look out for? And in truth, everywhere we may turn or we may look, and if you look with a microscope, whatever you're breathing, eating, touching has moving things on it. So at what point where do we draw the line that this is forbidden and this is permissible? And the Poskim, the halachic authorities tell us that the Torah was not given to angels, it was given to human beings, and therefore Hashem expects us to use our physical eyes that He gave us and nothing more. So if a magnifying glass would be necessary to see what we're looking for, that is not considered something Hashem wants us to be doing. It's just using our own eyes. And anything else, if you only see something because of a magnifying glass or because of a microscope, that is not in any way something Hashem forbids us to be avoiding, because that's not something that our eyes can see. Which in halacha, the concept is called something that's nir le'inaim. The bugs have to be seen by the average naked eye without any aid of anything. Now, obviously, there's many different visions. Some people have a very good vision and can pick up very small details. Some people can't. So it goes by the average person. It does not have to be. It does not go by the expert's vision. If you have an expert, he'll see much more things than the average person. It goes by the average person with good sight. What they see is considered something that you have to remove and check for. And if they don't see it, it's totally fine. It's mutter, it's permissible, and there's no prohibition. Hashem does not in any way forbid that. Now, even that is a bit complicated. What do you see? If someone takes a pen and makes the smallest possible dot on a piece of paper, they will see that dot. But if that dot was a bug, they may not notice that it's a bug unless it starts moving around. But otherwise, if you just see the smallest dot, it's just a dot, and you don't see anything else. So some halachic authorities require that once you see a dot, you have to look further into it. Then you have to maybe use some sort of magnification to help you see that dot better. But many hold that's not required. If with your naked eye you can't tell what that dot is, nothing further has to be done. It's fine, and you don't have to even remove it. So, to summarize, practically speaking, we have to be able to see that it's a bug. How do you see if something's a bug? We're going to discuss more in the next class how to identify bugs, but generally, for sure, if you see something moving, you know it's a live thing and you have to get rid of it. And if it's not moving, if you see clear appendages, legs, if you see wings, if you see a general pretty clear body shape, or if you see eyeballs or stuff like that, then you know for sure as well that it's a bug. Otherwise, if it's so small that you cannot tell in any way, and all it looks like for you is a speck, the generally accepted opinion is that it's fine and you don't have to get rid of it. And if you want to remove it, you can remove it, but you should consider your produce as being infested because you found that speck, and you do not have to take magnification, or you don't have to take any type of instrument to make it larger. The next thing which we want to, so sometimes people express, is that it seems very overwhelming. If you look at any kashrus guides, they mention light box, and some of them mention a Thrip cloth, a shmata, and using certain types of dish soaps, and all these different things make it seem so complicated. Is there a very more simple way to check? So what I'm going to highlight is the difference between what's needed and what is suggested, which is very different. What's needed is something you need to do, and what's suggested is it's going to make it, in a way, it may seem overwhelming, but ultimately it will make it more thorough and more easier for you in the long run. So technically, what's needed in order to check what's needed is you need a strong light, which could either be direct sunlight from a window or a strong overhead light. That's all that's technically needed. And vision, you need to be able to see. You need to have a proper vision to be able to see. Once you have that, technically, you don't need to do more. But where do all these other suggestions come in? All these other suggestions come in order to make things a bit more helpful. If you're going to be checking many, many leaves of lettuce, and each time you need to hold it up to the light with your hands, it may be straining on the arms or on your hands, and it may not be the most practical position each time to lift something up. So having a light box on your counter, and you just put the leaf down on the light box, may be more convenient. So the suggestion is to make things easier for you, and when things are easier, then you can do it more thoroughly. When things are a bit more straining, you can't do it as thoroughly. So it's something that's suggested of having light box, but it's not in any way necessary. So if you're only going to be eating 2 pieces of lettuce, and it's easier for you to just put it up to the strong light or the sunlight, so that's totally fine. But if you're going to be doing more than that, and you'll feel it'll be easier for you to work with light box, then that will be easier for you to do in such a case. Other things which will come up is, let's for example, many have the custom of washing their produce with salt or vinegar, because that's what was done for many generations. These days, the agencies require that certain types of vegetable washes or dish soaps, non-toxic dish soaps, and that seems, do I really need to go that far? So the answer is no, you don't have to go that far, but if you're going to be using salt and vinegar as opposed to a dish soap or a vegetable wash, your produce will come out not as clean, because the salt and vinegar does not get rid of the bugs as much. So you're going to end up with less clean produce, which means when you're going to check it, you're going to find bugs. You're going to have to wash it again. But if the first time you would have used something that was suggested by Hashgacha, which is proven to work properly, it would have made things easier. So again, it's a suggestion, not a requirement, but it's just there. It's there to make things more, again, easily done and more thoroughly done. In addition, sometimes people will see the concept of the shmata, and the concept of the shmata, in short, we'll go more in length when we discuss the whole process of the shmata. But the concept of the shmata is to filter the water through a cloth, a white cloth, that helps in, first of all, being able to spot the bugs. When the bugs are on the leaf, they're camouflaged, they can be hidden under crevices, and you have to open each crack of the leaf and look everywhere. When you're using the cloth, you just have to look in one piece of cloth, and that's it. You can also check many big amounts. You could check 6 heads of lettuce in a big tub, and after filter all that water through the cloth, and all you're checking is just one cloth. So instead of checking 30, 40 pieces of lettuce, you're just checking one thing. So that cloth could actually make things easier for you. It may seem like something new, so that may be overwhelming because it's new, but in truth, it actually makes things easier because it's a white cloth on a light box, you're checking it, or even if it's not a light box, you're checking it. It's much less to check than even a few leaves. It's just one thing to check. So that's that. And sometimes as well, some hashgachas will say to use a magnifying glass, and it's not that you need a magnifying glass, but it may be less straining on your eyes. Instead of squinting over every little thing over a light box, if you have a magnifying glass and use a magnifying glass, it'll just be easier to cruise over it and see things quicker. Not that you have to, but it's a suggestion that at times may make it easier for you to spot things instead of each time pausing and squinting and trying to figure out if something is a bug. Having a magnifying glass is just a suggestion of something that may be easier for you. So these are all just some examples of things that hashgachas may suggest. They're not needed per se, but they're suggested because ultimately it will help you do things more thorough, and it will help you and get better results. Next week, we will be discussing identifying bugs. We'll be showing many pictures, many visuals to get familiar with the bugs and their colors and their shapes and characteristics so that we can know what to look for and what to identify as we check our produce, so that we're not in the dark trying to look for something which we don't know what we're even looking for. Thank you very much.